It's time for Clemson Sports Talk with Lawton Swan.
Ready, set.
Just call me Swanny.
Tiger style. Tiger style.
Finally, Clemson Sports Talk has come back to Drive Time. Hello, everybody. Lawton Swan back in the saddle once again. It is the show that shakes the Southland. Clemson Sports Talk for you each and every afternoon as you make your way around the great state of South Carolina and beyond, listening to us on incredible radio stations like Fox Sports Radio 1400 in the Midlands, around the world on the iHeart radio application. All right, so what a weekend. What a weekend. Of course, your Clemson Tigers were not playing college football this past Saturday. And the games that took place, whether you were locked in on Texas, Oklahoma, whether you were locked in on Michigan, Nebraska, whether you were locked in on Notre Dame, Virginia Tech, or even the creme de la creme, the piece de resistance, Alabama versus Texas A&M. Man, what a weekend it was. And again, I went over the numbers on Friday talking about Jimbo Fisher's performance there at A&M by comparison to Kevin Sumlin, and the fact that Sumlin was actually had done better than Jimbo Fisher, but the Aggies rose up in front of 100,000+ people and found a way to knock off the Crimson Tide this past Saturday. So there is a new number one in college football. Boy, that's what I need. I need the old Howard Finkel. And new number one at the top, Georgia, the Bulldogs. In the AP poll, they received all 62 first place votes. They are 6-0. Your Tigers remain unranked in the AP poll, and they dropped further in the coaches poll on a bye week at 3-2. Clemson now outside of the top 24. The last lingering hope to a top 25 is in the coaches poll at number 25. As for the remaining votes in the AP poll, it looks something like this. Georgia, number one. Iowa, fresh off of their come-from-behind victory over Penn State at 6-0 at number 2. Cincinnati, sitting there at number 3 with a 5-0 record. Oklahoma survives Texas. As a matter of fact, my Siri at one point said that Oklahoma is being demolished by Texas. Instead, Oklahoma makes a run, a quarterback change. They go from Spencer Rattler to Caleb Williams, a freshman. Williams lights it up. They end up going back to Rattler for a minute, back to Williams. I mean, it was like a ping pong match between who was going to be the quarterback at Oklahoma. They finish with a dub. They finish at number 4. At number 5, the Crimson Tide, who ain't it peculiar, folks, when Alabama loses to an unranked team who is 3-2, they don't fall very far. Anybody else doesn't get that same benefit, but Alabama gets the Crimson Tide treatment. Now, you can say, Swanny, well, Clemson got the benefit of the doubt when they lost to Georgia. Yeah, that was a top 5 Georgia team, and that is now the number 1 ranked Georgia Bulldog team. More on that in a little bit here on the program. Number 6 is the 5-1 Ohio State Buckeyes. 7, Penn State, still in the mix again after losing to Iowa, still right there at number 7. Remember, you only have to be in the top 4. Michigan stays alive. The Wolverines were in trouble at Nebraska. Taylor Martinez did Taylor Martinez things in that ball game, and that includes fumbling the football late, deep in their own territory, allowing Michigan to kick the game-winning field goal. In that one, Oregon is at number 9. Michigan State undefeated 6-0, sitting there at number 10. The Kentucky Wildcats, currently 6-0, sitting at number 11. By the way, they take on Georgia this Saturday, game day. 2 6-0 teams in the SEC squaring off at the top of the SEC East. Oklahoma State is ranked 12th. They are 5-0. Ole Miss also right there. The Rebels sitting there in your college football AP rankings at number 13 with a 4-run record. Notre Dame, 14. Coastal Carolina, the Chanticleers, still undefeated, feeling good at number 15. Wake Forest at 6-0, undefeated, number 16. Arkansas drops their second game this time, and that was another game. I didn't even mention it earlier. Arkansas on the road, taking on Ole Miss in Oxford. What do? A back-and-forth affair. 3 touchdowns, I believe, in like the final minute and 40 seconds, something like that. A ridiculous number. I mean, you had Arkansas score to tie it. You then had Ole Miss race down the field to score to take the lead. Then Arkansas comes back and scores on the final play in regulation and then goes for 2, only to come up short, 52-51, your final score there. The incredibly powerful SEC defenses showing up for that one. They got Arizona State at 18, BYU 19, Florida's 20. A&M is back in the top 25 at 4-2. They are number 21. NC State is number 22 at 4-1. SMU 6-0 and ranked 23rd. San Diego State 24th, and 25th is Texas in the AP poll. Again, Clemson ranked 25th in the coaches poll. I'll give you that rundown briefly here. Won't give you quite as of an extensive look at it. Georgia 1, Iowa 2, Oklahoma 3, Cincinnati 4, Alabama number 5 in the coaches poll. 6 through 10 is Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Michigan State, and Oregon. So again, 6, 7, 8, and 9, all from the Big Ten. And if you're Cincinnati, having Alabama lose, probably the worst thing that could happen to Cincinnati. Honestly, most people think, why would you say that, Swanny? Well, I think there's no chance that if Cincinnati is 4 and everything above Alabama were to hold, I don't think there's any reason for me to believe that the Crimson Tide would not surpass Cincinnati at some point along the way if they continue to win out. And I'm not so certain that even a Georgia team that would lose in an SEC championship game would be out behind Cincinnati. So more on that later. Again, Clemson still hanging in to the coaches poll, the only 3-2 team in the coaches poll, sitting there at number 25. They'll take on Syracuse coming up on Friday up in Syracuse, New York. So crazy Friday evening game. But again, looking around the country and watching college football this Saturday, I mean, there were just so many unbelievably exciting and compelling games. And again, I think if you are a Texas fan today, you're trying to figure out what the heck happened. How in the world do you allow things to unravel the way things unraveled for the Longhorns in their loss to Oklahoma? I mean, that to me, just from the standpoint of a level of frustration, has to be at the top of the mark for any team in college football today, because they were incredibly in control of that ball game. And I know it's early. You up 28-7 after the first quarter. You're up 38-20 at the break, and you get outscored 35-10 in the second half. Think about that. And fall 55-48. I mean, and listen, I know the transfer portal is all a Twitter about players jumping in. But Spencer Rattler goes 8 of 15 for 111 yards, 1 interception, no touchdowns, 5 carries for -9 yards. He did have a score there, though. But Caleb Williams, a true freshman, comes in. He goes 16 of 25 for 212 yards, 2 touchdowns through the air, and then rushes 4 times for 88 yards and a touchdown. Hard to imagine that Spencer Rattler gets that starting job back there at Oklahoma. I don't know. We'll see how it all unfolds, but there is no doubt that Caleb Williams appeared to be the better of the 2 quarterbacks in that game. And then from the standpoint of Texas Longhorns, you know what's more painful about this loss than most? Dude, that neutral site game in the Cotton Bowl. I mean, being a neutral site game just has to be so incredibly frustrating for the Texas Longhorns. Again, the Oklahoma Sooners have found a way, game in and game out, and even in a ball game where at one point they trailed 38-20, they find a way to come back and just score 35 points in the second half, including 25 in the fourth quarter, to overcome their arch rivals, the Texas Longhorns. And the SEC chants at game day were also expected and awkward as well, as we don't know how long those two teams are going to continue to be in the Big 12 over the next 5 years. But they were championing the SEC quickly. You know, for all the Oklahoma and Texas fans that have said for years how dumb chanting your conference is, they were quick to jump in and become dumb and chant about the conference that they're currently not even in, but will be joining. And speaking of the conference they will be joining, well, Nick Saban and the Alabama Crimson Tide fall on the road at Texas A&M. The defending national champions, again, only fall 4 spots, but no longer do the Crimson Tide have any buffer when it comes down to the college football season. It also means that the Alabama Crimson Tide have to win out, in my estimation, to make the college football playoff at this point. Again, we have talked about 2 lost teams being in the college football playoffs. Alabama would certainly be a team that I think you would have to consider for something like that, especially given the job that Nick Saban has done over the past few years. But if people are quick to not grant Clemson that same leeway, then I don't know how you grant it to Alabama. Now, you'll say to me, well, Swanny, their loss came to Texas A&M, and I'll say you're right. That was an unranked Texas A&M team at the time. That was an unranked Texas A&M team at the time. And quite frankly, unlike Clemson's loss to an unranked NC State team at the time, Clemson lost in overtime. Alabama lost this thing in regulation and was pretty fortunate that they were actually able to get back in the ball game after the way things were playing out for them on the road in Aggieland. I mean, Texas A&M at one point in that game is up 24-10 going into the half, and then an incredible exchange takes place in the third quarter where Alabama blocks a Texas A&M punt to narrow the gap to 24-17, again, relying on special teams to keep them in the game. And yet on the ensuing kickoff, Texas A&M's Devin Achane, I think might be his name, went 96 yards with a kick return to make the score 31-17. So again, A&M up 14 points on Alabama. The Crimson Tide would not only fight back, but the Crimson Tide would take the lead with 5 minutes remaining after Bryce Young found Jameson Williams wide open in the end zone. Nobody was covering him. If you watched it, however, it feels like there probably should have been an infraction or a flag thrown on that play for illegal motion, and not all the players were set. Nonetheless, A&M comes back 2 minutes later. Zach Calzetta hit Anais Smith with a 25-yard pass. Calzetta gets banged up. A&M makes the extra point. You're thinking, man, if this thing has to go to overtime, no way A&M's going to win this because Calzetta's hurt. And then A&M forces Alabama to punt. The Aggies take over. They go 8 plays, 54 yards with Calzetta in the game and kick a game-winning field goal from Seth Small from 28 yards out to win it 41-38 and to knock off number 1. And I will say again, that later in the season, if Alabama picks up another loss somewhere along the way to, I don't know, Georgia in the SEC championship game, guess what? I don't see where their resume is all that different from Clemson's. I mean, honestly, if the Tigers were to win out at this point, and Alabama were to win out at this point, except for losing in the SEC championship game, I don't really know how their resumes are all that different, especially if you focus on who they were beaten by. Both of those teams would have been beaten at that time by Georgia, again, the top team in the land. And then both teams would have lost to teams who were outside of the top 25 when they were defeated. This is not the same Texas A&M team that was ranked inside the top 10 earlier this season. And so you have to take wins and losses on the face of when they happened. And additionally, I would add to that, sure, would Alabama at the end of this season have better wins than Clemson? I cannot deny that at this point. But would Alabama have a conference championship and an extended winning streak and all of those things going into a playoff if they were to lose in the SEC championship that Clemson would have? Absolutely not. So again, for all the people out there that have been naysaying a 2-loss Clemson team, here's what you have to do. You have to naysay a second-loss Alabama team to the college football playoff, because it is nearly identical in terms of the losses to what Clemson would have. And you guys have been shooting Clemson out of the college football playoff for a while now. No, look, as the orange-shaded, orange Kool-Aid drinking guy that you guys call me, I get it. My job's to protect Clemson, right? Let me go ahead and tell you this, though. The one difference, even if Clemson's ACC champions, the one difference for me is this. Between now and the end of the regular season and the end of the ACC championship game, if Clemson is so fortunate to get there, you got to start looking the part. You got to start looking like the Annihilators. You got to start looking like the team that can beat people's brains in on the gridiron. And if you don't start to look that way, then all I can tell you is it's going to be extremely difficult for anybody to compare your resume to Alabama, to compare the losses to the Crimson Tides, even with an ACC championship, and put you in. So part of the policy, even though I think that you have every right to have an argument for that if things were to play out the right way, if we're going to talk about 2-loss teams being in at this point, and if Alabama were to lose to Georgia later and Clemson were to continue to win out and just have the 2 losses that they have, listen, I think as an ACC champ, they should have as much of an argument as the Crimson Tide. But you have to start looking the part. If you continue to win games 14-8, if you continue to just survive by the skin of your teeth, then even at the end, even with a similar resume, I don't know that it's going to hold water. Clemson's time is now. They have to begin looking impressive. But again, congratulations to the folks over at TexAgs.com, one of our sister sites. I mean, they were absolutely wired up to the gills to see their Aggies go on to win that game against the Crimson Tide again, 41-38. Impressive, however, was the fact that Alabama, even as you kind of rolled through the ball game, Alabama never really got in trouble in terms of the number when it came down to the percentage of win probability. I think at one point it got to about 82% in favor of Texas A&M, but almost immediately the Crimson Tide flip it when they get the block punt, and that thing drops from 82% to 67%, and then Alabama just keeps coming, and eventually, man, Alabama swings it all the way to an 89.3%, opportunity to win that ball game, and they let the Aggies off the hook, and the Aggies came and took it. What a game, what a moment, what a weekend. 803-450-0086, text line and phone line. Again, it is the show that shakes the Southland Clemson Sports Talk. Rolling along here on a Monday afternoon. Don't forget hour number 2. William Qualkenbush comes up. We'll find out what he thinks. 2-loss teams, et cetera, in the college football playoff. And can the top 4 teams continue to survive the way several of them have. Stay with us. Back at it on a Monday afternoon, the show that shakes the Southland. All right, Rick chimes into the program. He says, Swanny, so a number 3 team can lose to a number 5 team and drop 6 spots. Of course, he's talking about your Clemson Tigers falling in the season opener. Again, 10-3 the final score. Pick 6 is the way that thing went down for the Georgia Bulldogs to beat Clemson. Number 3 loses to number 5, and Clemson drops 6 spots to number 9. But a number 1 loses to an unranked team and only drops 4 spots. Care to explain? AP poll? That comes to us from Rick. Jim says, Swanny, that is just SEC ESPN bias. ESPN has way too many cumulative votes in the AP poll. Anyway, so a couple of people chiming in on that front. Also over the weekend, I did tweet out the code that you can use over at Tiger Traditions or at Gamecock Traditions or even online, CST21, to save 10% off of your order. If you want more information on that, head over to Twitter and look up in our pinned post. We've got all the information and links that you need. Again, CST21. Just think Clemson Sports Talk 21. That's Gamecocks and Tigers. We'll save you 10% over at Tiger Traditions or Gamecock Traditions. So, all right. Again, Rick makes a valid point. That's a retweetable offense, Rick. Another thing, too, I tweeted about, I was just scrolling through my Twitter feed real quick here. Did you see the way that the Texas A&M kicker likes the ball held or placed? The way his holder squats and almost holds the ball out in front, almost under his left knee. Like I thought maybe it was the angle, but I don't think it is, because I watch a lot of kicks from that angle and I can normally see the football when the kicker goes to kick it, but not in this scenario. You couldn't see it. So I don't know. I mean, that to me was one of the things that I was kind of like, huh? Never seen that before. And that made, I think, everybody nervous watching it as well. But again, for anybody out there that's looking at that number and thinking about how the Crimson Tide failed to drop all that far, part of it is certainly their resume and what they have done. I don't think anybody's denying that, and they get a benefit of the doubt, and Clemson deserves a similar benefit of the doubt. But there is some precedent to say, yeah, but Clemson got beat by a top 5 team and dropped a lot further than Alabama did. Now, Alabama's got victories at this point over a 14th ranked Miami, over an 11th ranked Florida, over a 12th ranked Ole Miss. I get all that. But Miami was overrated. Florida is overrated. Ole Miss might be overrated as well. Look, I just mentioned how they survived against Arkansas, and I'm not necessarily buying in to the Razorbacks either. So I think they are good teams, not great. I think people who say they are great are trying to overinflate the resumes of the SEC. And so I don't really buy into all of that. But I do think that Alabama, because they have defeated those teams at this point, gets some benefit of the doubt that they probably deserve. But the numbers are the numbers, and it is interesting to say the least. Again, for Clemson, all of this being said, you have to start looking the part. Like, you have to start looking the part, because teams are going to continue to lose games. That is going to be, I think, the storyline of 2021 in college football, is that there are going to be a lot of teams that are going to continue to fall. And what you have to do is just keep winning, but you have to begin to look impressive doing it as well. I think there is clearly an opportunity out there for a 2-loss team this year. Maybe Alabama's the favorite to be that 2-loss team. Maybe it's Ohio State, on and on and on. But I do think that there is going to be a 2-loss team in the college football playoff the more we see how this wackadoo season is unfolding. 803-450-0086, 803-450-0086. As for our fine feathered friends that peek over the fence and hang out with us each and every day, and perhaps today is the day that they are not peeking over the fence, the South Carolina Gamecocks, and this is why they're not peeking over the fence, were blasted by Tennessee. And again, hinge game. This is one I said, look, if you didn't get the Kentucky game, this is the last remaining hope for having a season where you go to a bowl game. And not only did South Carolina not show up, South Carolina got down 28-0 in the first quarter. They got down 28-0 in less than 15 minutes. And the first touchdown went to Jalen Hyatt, a kid who played right here in the Midlands of South Carolina. Then you also had another kid who played right here in the Midlands of South Carolina named Jordan Birch throw an interception in this ball game as South Carolina was down deep in Tennessee territory. So, look, you got me. You're down 14-0. You drive the ball 10 plays, 73 yards. You're at the 2-yard line. Again, 14-0, the 2-yard line. And Jordan Birch gets the ball and throws an interception. Wait, what are you telling me happened again? Like, that's the moment where I think South Carolina fans were just livid because, one, you're not as good as Tennessee. 2, you're not as good as a lot of teams you're going to play this year. And 3, when you're on the road and you got the ball at the 2-yard line, don't get cute. You know what that reminds me of? The things that Clemson would do early on, not necessarily in Dabo Swinney's tenure at Clemson, but with Chad Morris. Don't get cute. Just put the ball in the end zone and make it 14-7. Everything doesn't have to be fancy. You want to have Jordan Birch throw a touchdown pass up 35? Fine by me. But when you try to do that in a close ball game and it spills over to what they get up to, 35-0 at one point, yeah, that's not a good look. We'll hit a quick break and come back with more right here on the show that shakes the Southland. Stay with us. Clemson Sports Talk on a Tuesday afternoon. Again, 803-450-0086. That's the text line. If you want to be a part of the program, hit us up. We'd love to have you. You can also call that number and leave us a message, and we'll get you on the air. Yesterday, we had a chance to catch up with DJ Ungalale. I'm hoping to hear a little more ooh-wee. You notice I was doing that a lot before the season. Now it's more like, Gungale. Ungalale. Like, it doesn't feel like ooh-wee at all. It has not been ooh-wee. I'm looking for some more ooh-wee from DJ. We haven't seen it. He was asking about how he spent his bye week, and he said he made his way back to California to see his mom and brother.
I just went back home. Got to go back home. So flew back home. Got to see my brother play. Best recruit in the nation, Young Concrete. Until we on the lay. Got to see him play last Friday. And I just chilled out the house. Hung out with my mom, watched college football, and just hung out with some friends, family.
Young Concrete from Mateo Uyunglele. I love the name. He was also asking about what it was, how it was to just finally get some rest after the way the season's been going.
I think it's always good. Yeah, no, it was always good. I got to see my family, got to see my brother play, got to see my mom. It was cool. Just kind of got to relax, kind of get away from it just a little bit, a couple hours away from it. But it was good though. I miss my mom, miss my brother. Got to go see them all. But it was good. I thought it was really good.
DJ was also asked about whether or not he had a chance to watch that Syracuse-Wake Forest game. Of course, Wake Forest escaping Syracuse with a victory. And again, the D-Medica is still undefeated. Here's what he said about watching that matchup in preparation for the contest that will take place up at the Carrier Dome Friday night.
I seen a little bit of it. I watched a lot of it on film, but I didn't watch. I watched some of it live, but I watched a lot of the Oklahoma-Texas game. I was watching that one, and then after that game, I had to go somewhere, so I didn't get to watch too much of the Syracuse and Wake Forest game.
What's been your impression of that Syracuse defense? Is any different than maybe what you guys have seen from other defenses?
I think Not, I mean, they do a lot of stuff that's schematically. They do a lot of stuff that's really well. With their own defense, so they have a little different stuff than a lot of other teams. Every defense is a little different than each other and do a lot of different stuff. But I thought they're really good defense, really fundamentally sound. That they play really fast and they fly to the ball.
DJ Uyunglele, again, talking about that Syracuse defense. And that defense, again, could be the thing that keeps Syracuse not only in this ballgame, but gives them a chance to win it, because Clemson's offense hasn't played well, right? So it's not like you've got to be next level in order to slow this Clemson Tiger team down at this point. I mean, they've looked average in every single game offensively, and you could almost add in that SC State game, because even in a blowout, it never felt like what Clemson's offense has felt like for the past 6-7 years. It's just felt like something's not quite there. He was also asked about that exact fact, like something not quite being there or being close. He mentioned that when he talked about his takeaways from Clemson's matchup with Boston College.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think we're very close to exploding. I think, like Jordan said, I think we're right there. Just little stuff right there that could just take us to the next level where we see ourselves playing as an offense. We think we're just right there. And the more we keep practicing, the more we keep playing, I think we're just getting closer and closer and closer each and every time.
DJ was also asked about, some of the errors or mistakes that he made against Boston College, and not only whether or not they kind of stick with him, but going back out there on the field and practicing some of those throws after the game.
I just kind of want to get out of my system. I know there's throws that I missed. Kind of want to just go out there and correct it. And I want to wait till the next day. So I kind of just want to get out there and just fix it right then and there. Just like when it's fresh in my mind. I feel like when you be able to go fix something right, like say you have a throw in practice and you miss the throw, you do it right after practice. So same thing with a game. Like I have a throw that I missed or something I want to really want. Just get it done right after the game. I feel like it's just super fresh and be able to fix it right then and there.
Again, DJ Uyunglele talking about his preparation for the Syracuse game and also just getting his mind right after his performance against Boston College. And he was asked about, any of the throws that he wished he could get back from that BC game.
I think there was probably 6, I thought. There was 6. The one to Bo, there's a couple to Bo. One of the flat routes I was rolling out, missed him, just threw it right behind him, easy one. Another one was the wheel to him, overthrew him, should have given him a chance on that one. Other one was I rolled out, and then we kind of did like a little switch, and he ran up the field, missed him, threw a little too high. Other one was the Joe. Should have gave him a chance. It was on a press fade. Probably should have thrown a back shoulder instead of leading him down the field. Another one was when he got a PI call. I just threw it a little too far ahead of him. And I'm trying to think. On the stick route where Sage made a catch, but it was low. It was really low. He made a great catch. He did a great job catching it, but I feel like I should have put it up a little bit higher.
So there you go, DJ, breaking down some of the throws that he felt like he's missed. And he was asked, what does he attribute those missed throws to?
I think a combination of everything. Some of them might have were getting downhill on the rollout a little bit easier and making it easier with me, and then some other ones just throwing it, just being confident in throwing, just giving the receiver a chance instead of trying to throw a purple ball.
So again, there he is, DJ Uyunglele, talking about just some of the issues that have plagued him this season as Clemson's offense has truly struggled. And again, a big-time matchup coming up Friday night on the road at Syracuse. Not a big-time matchup necessarily because of the name on the docket, but a big-time matchup because of what's become now the thing that's at stake for Clemson. Potential trip to the ACC championship game. I mean, all of those things are diminished, not only significantly, but I would make the argument to the point of no return with another loss in conference. If you can stay where you are, there's still some vulnerabilities, I think, in NC State, and then you've also got the right at that point, if you went out, to control your own destiny, assuming that the Wolfpack don't find a way to have a singular loss in conference play, which not a lot of people would still, I think, buy into that for the Wolfpack. 803-450-0086 text line, phone line 803-450-0086. You can always be a part of the program. Coming up on the show, we heard a little bit from DJ there. Well, we've got some more here as we'll hear from defensive end Myles Murphy on the show that shakes the Southland in hour number 1. Don't forget, our buddy Mike Yuva joins the program coming up in hour number 2. 803-450-0086. Text line, phone line. Be a part of the program all the time. That's right, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Stay with us. Final segment in hour number 1, the show that shakes the Southland, Clemson Sports Talk, Lawton Swan with you. You know, during the offseason, I talked a lot about Trenton Simpson, and I talked a good bit about Andrew Booth. But one kid whose name I didn't bring up enough is Myles Murphy. Love the way Myles Murphy played. Love the way he played as a true freshman. Love the way he's playing as a sophomore. And really, as great of a football player as he is, he seems to be an even better human being off of the field. Myles Murphy was asked about how he spent his off week yesterday afternoon. Here's what Myles Murphy had to say.
Honestly, I just took a mental break as far as football goes, but went home, spent time with my family, just spent as much time around them because, I'm here most of the time. So just took as much time pretty much away from here. I still watch football on Saturday, watch all the games on Saturday, got a little bit of football in, got a little bit of a sweat on Saturday, just a little bit of workout Saturday morning. And I just really enjoyed my days off.
So there he is, Myles Murphy, talking about enjoying his time off away from football, catching a little mental break. He was also asked about his mindset after watching those games unfold this past Saturday, where you had teams like Alabama falling. So many other great games were on this past Saturday, and it's been sort of the recipe of the season. Upset specials, teams getting beat, teams in the top 25 getting beat, setting records on that front. Here's what Myles Murphy had to say about his mindset after this past weekend's outcomes.
Yeah, I'm about to say, just focus on what we can, focus on what we need to focus on, and control what we control, just like he said. And we just control what we do day by day, control everything that we do week by week, and not looking at the 10th game of the season, but looking at the next game that's ahead of us.
Murphy was also asked about Clemson's depth. Obviously, that defensive line missing 2 key components. Tyler Davis, who will be coming back hopefully in 4 or 5 weeks, whatever it ends up being for him. And then also Brian Brzee, who's out for the year. He was asked about just the depth, not only on the defensive front, but for the entire Clemson defense.
With Tyler and Brian being out with 2 big guys in the middle and having E.T., Trey, and Root, and paying for dudes that'll have to step up, they did exactly what I knew that they could do. So honestly, it was no surprise to me that they performed the way they performed this past weekend. And honestly, I could see that being something show day in and day out.
Myles Murphy yesterday up in Tigertown. 803-450-0086, 803-450-0086. Again, Clemson and Syracuse will kick things off this Friday night, which is just strange. But at this point in the Atlantic Coast Conference, you got to get used to it because of that contract with ESPN. Now, the Syracuse Orange, again, are 3-3. Clemson's 3-2. We talked about ESPN's football power index predictor having Pitt favored to beat Clemson. It does not have Syracuse favored to beat Clemson. As a matter of fact, Clemson is 87.3% likely to win this ball game, according to ESPN's projector. But Syracuse quarterback Garrett Schrader, 50 of 87 on the season, 627 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, and 1 interception. And Myles Murphy was asked to give some details about what he thinks about Schrader at quarterback for the Orange.
Very, very important. We are a gap sound defense, and that's kind of a big preaching point that Venables has been telling all the defensive ends and linebackers to do. Just keep containing the quarterback, keep him in the pocket, and make him make a play instead of him creating a play on his feet.
So don't let Schrader get going on the ground. Make him put the ball in the air. Make him throw the football and try to limit anything that he can do on the ground. He was also asked about the young guys and the young players on this defense and whether or not, it's difficult for young guys not to try to do too much during a ball game. Your adrenaline's up, you're ready to play, you've been chomping at the bit all week to get back out there on the gridiron and hit somebody not wearing the same color uniform or the same logo on the side of the helmet as you. And here's what Myles Murphy had to say about how difficult it is for players to not, quote, do too much during these games.
It is very tempting for a young player to just get big eyes and just see the ball and go get ball, but not remembering their key to stay outside the tackle and keep contained because the blitz is coming up the middle, or vice versa, going inside instead of doing what they want to do and just seeing the ball going outside and not maintaining their gap in the blitz.
Myles Murphy talking about this Clemson Tiger defense and doing everything they can to be the best they can be and keep this Clemson Tiger offense in these games. And a lot of that comes along with maybe some risk-reward opportunities. And if these young fellas are taking too many risks or making some poor decisions, it could come back to bite Clemson in the rear end. He was asked also about if he feels like everything is starting to come together for him at defensive end. I would make the argument things came together for him a year ago at the defensive end spot. But here's what Murphy said about his development.
I most definitely do. Actually, I felt it kind of like late last season and all during spring, and I felt like it came together during fall camp. And I'm really understanding not only our defense but just football mechanics and how offensive coordinators think in different situations, and I'm picking up on that a little bit more.
Final thing for Myles Murphy was about the defensive ends and if they have a nickname. The guys that were there previously called themselves the Power Rangers, and certainly that was that defensive front. But he was asked about if the defensive ends have a nickname yet.
Not a nickname just yet. We should come up with one pretty soon, though. Yeah.
Give me a update.
So they're in the planning phases, according to Myles Murphy. 803-450-0086, 803-450-0086. Text on the phone line. Don't forget Mike Yuba coming up in hour number 2. And again, thank you to John Blau for hanging out with us in hour number 1. Always good to hear from Blau from the Post and Courier. And now Mike Yuba, now with Gamecock Central, joins the program. Think about that for a second. It's official. Gamecock Central's Mike Yuba joins the program here each and every week on a Tuesday to help us peek over the fences to the backyard of the South Carolina Gamecocks. Hour number 2 coming up right after this. Stay with us.
It's time for Clemson Sports Talk with Lawton Swan.
Ready, set. Just call me Swanny.
Tiger style. Tiger style.
It is hour number 2. That's drive time right here on the show that shakes the Southland. And without further ado, William Qualkenbush joins the program. What a weekend. The Crimson Tide, however, go down at the hands of Texas A&M. A shocking result. They are knocked off. Just a great game. And I got to say, given the fact that Zach Calzada played the way he played, to me, against the Alabama Crimson Tide was probably the biggest story of the night.
Well, I got to say, Swanny, first of all, thank you for having me once again. It's a privilege and a pleasure. Second thing is I have to apologize because, and this is why you can't take yourself too seriously in our business, that one of the things that I said, I even tweeted it out earlier Saturday, was that there were 2 things that I didn't think would ever happen. One was Mac Brown will never beat Florida State. I think it's just crystal clear that that's the case. But the other thing, Swanee, is that Nick Saban would never lose to one of his assistants. Little did I know that like 6 hours after that, or 5 hours after that, whatever, that first thing happened. And I got to be honest, if you had asked me if Jimbo Fisher or Lane Kiffin or Kirby Smart was more likely to beat Nick Saban, I would have put Jimbo probably third because Lane is the most unlike Saban, and Kirby has the best alternative to Saban. And Jimbo's like somewhere in the middle, and his teams are disappointing. And I was basically writing off the entirety of Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M, which, I mean, I still expect them to lose next week, and we'll just forget that any of this ever happened unless we need to put Alabama in the playoff, in which case we will exalt Texas A&M and say we're a top 15 program when they play or something like that. But regardless, I mean, Zach Calzada turning into Cinderella overnight was definitely something I was not expecting.
Yeah, man, he made some throws, especially late in that ball game, and the final touchdown throw he made to Smith was just incredible. He took the hit and, obviously shook that off and was still able to come back. But, when you watch a team, and this was one of the things I talked about in hour one, when you watch a team maneuver the ball down the field, making throws, deep balls, slants, post, whatever routes you want to talk about, as a Clemson observer, or even the Clemson fans, that has to be exceedingly more frustrating than it's been recently, because you're not seeing any of that from Clemson. And it just makes you go, why isn't Clemson able to do that when A&M's backup is doing that against Alabama?
Well, I think we have to have some perspective too. We had not seen that from Texas A&M. We were openly laughing at Texas A&M until the Alabama game. This is a team that, yes, they had a quarterback go down, Haynes King, but King was not impressive in the small time that we saw him play quarterback. Calzada lost the job to an unimpressive King, and then was unimpressive for the next 2.5 games. I mean, let's not forget, this is a team that was shut out in the first half against Arkansas. This is a team that, again, in that Colorado game, it was 7-3 until A&M's final offensive possession, when they barely beat a team that was shut out by Minnesota, who lost to Bowling Green the next week. So, and then they lost at home to a Mississippi State team that is not blowing anybody's doors off offensively. So I don't think we can act like Texas A&M was coming into this game rolling. There's a reason that they were an 18-point favorite, and that a lot of folks like me were saying lay the points, don't even pretend there's going to be a game. My wife and I were hanging out with my parents on Saturday night, and my dad was trying to figure out what game to put on the big screen, and I was basically like, don't put Alabama A&M up there. I mean, we don't need to watch that after a quarter and a half. Put Michigan, Nebraska up there, or Notre Dame, Virginia Tech. There are other better games. And it turned out that we missed a little bit. I mean, we ended up turning it, obviously, but we missed a little bit of the best game of the night. But let's not act like Texas A&M came in there rolling like we expected them to put up points and things of that nature. Zach Calzada looked like a guy that was about to get roasted by Alabama. And not because Alabama's great defensively, but because Zach Calzada has not been good. Statistically, he's not been good. When he throws the ball, it's not looked good. He's not been consistent mechanically. They've not been able to consistently protect him. And the defense hasn't been consistent, even though they've been more consistent than the offense. So the fact that they were able to beat Alabama, I'll be honest with you, Swanny, it may be sort of like a key that unlocked a whole bunch of success. I'm going to chalk it up right now to one magical night, and not necessarily A&M figures it out. But if you're a Clemson fan and you watch that performance from A&M, the good news is you could do that. To me, it's not about how unattainable it is for Clemson to be like Texas A&M. It's about if A&M can do it with their offense that has looked very similar to Clemson's thus far, albeit with a better overall player in Isaiah Spiller in the backfield. But particularly in terms of quarterback play and offensive line play, it's been eerily similar. The similarity between the two programs. You can say we can do that next week. That can be our trajectory, and we can get out of this, at least for the moment. And Clemson may need to do that at Syracuse on Friday.
William Qualkenbush again hangs out with us every Monday afternoon to talk about your Clemson Tigers and the weekend that was. And one of the things that people were obviously tweeting about and talking about after the ball game was the fact that when the rankings came out on Sunday, Alabama sitting there at number 5. And I think it was Rick that hit us up and said, so number 3 can lose to number 5 and drop 6 spots. That's what happened to your Tigers out of the gate when they dropped to the now number 1 ranked Georgia Bulldogs. But number 1 loses to an unranked team and only drops 4 spots. Qualt, I get it. Alabama's resume's got some wins on it right now that Clemson out of the gates did not have, with that being a season opener against Georgia. And I get it. Much like Clemson, Alabama has earned what I would call the right to have the benefit of the doubt given to them. But it is just a bit frustrating, I think, for not just Tiger fans, but people across the country to see Alabama sitting there. And I'll tell you who else, Cincinnati fans probably are a little perturbed that the Crimson Tide are as close on their heels as they are, because ultimately that's a team that's going to probably maneuver themselves right back into the conversation of the top four. What say you on that front?
Well, I mean, I would love to get on the grievance train and act like everybody's biased toward Alabama and against Clemson in this. That just, to me, it feels like a hammer in search of a nail, that people are looking for ways to be aggrieved by Alabama's drop. We were seeing it after the game, like instead of reveling in Texas A&M, people were talking about, oh, let's see how far Alabama falls. Here's the reality. And you just said it. Clemson had no wins when Clemson dropped. If Clemson had Alabama's resume of wins at this point, Clemson would be number 5 or better. That's the bottom line. I mean, I don't see those. I mean, it's not even apples and oranges. It's like apples and, I don't know, construction paper. Like, it's not even in the same ballpark, trying to compare Clemson's resume after week 1 and saying, well, Clemson dropped such and such spots, losing to such and such team, like Clemson had any wins. Clemson had not put any goodwill in the bank. And I'm also not here for the argument that Clemson is getting screwed by the voters. There were people trying to fire Clemson's offensive coordinator and bench their quarterback for a 2-2 football team that was still ranked, Swanny. They were still ranked going into the Boston College game. I don't, like, if Clemson wasn't Clemson, if it didn't say Clemson across the front of the jersey, would a team that had played like Clemson and had Clemson's resume of wins, losses, and performances at 2-2 been ranked? I don't think so. Wake Forest just got ranked. They hadn't lost yet. NC State, Boston College struggling. They had not lost at that point. Well, NC State, I guess, lost to Mississippi State, but particularly Boston College was barely ahead of Clemson at that point. So I'm not here for, poor old Clemson getting screwed by the voters again, where Clemson's the one getting hosed and Alabama's not. To me, you can't act like Alabama hasn't already built up one of the best wins in the one of the best wins in the country over Ole Miss, one of the best road wins in the country, going to beat Florida. Although, I mean, Florida's lost 2 games.
Right.
I will say that there are two things that bother me, okay, about Alabama. One is, and I don't know how to say this without sounding conspiratorial, but I will. There were 2, I would say, fairly egregious errors that just so happened to go for Alabama in the game that Texas A&M had to overcome. The first was that when they scored their touchdown, nobody was set on that front. That was an audible by the quarterback. That was a complete swing and a miss by the officials. Everybody who knows football says Alabama was not set for a full second. They probably, I mean, it may have been an illegal formation. I don't even know. There was a lot of stuff that looked weird about the quick snap of the ball and the throw out to Williams, albeit he was also the guy who just caught the ball. So shouldn't you have somebody over the top of him if you're the defense there? I mean, I felt like that was pretty egregious. So, yeah, we can talk about Alabama, but the reality is A&M should have had somebody there. And the second is what I thought was a textbook targeting, where you've got a guy who's being held up by 2 defenders, who is hit with the crown of the helmet to his helmet by a tackler coming in, perhaps simultaneous with the whistle blowing, maybe a tad late with the whistle blowing. That seemed like, to me, no one knows what targeting is or is not, but that seemed like the kind of hit that you want to take out of the game. There's a lot of people ejected for targeting for way less malicious hits than that. That just seemed like a dirty play to me. And the officials come back and say no targeting. I thought those were 2 egregious errors that the officials missed that benefited Alabama. So I thought that was certainly something that you can like hold the grievance card and say the SEC officials tried their best to keep Alabama unbeaten. But as far as their dropping the rankings go, their resume of wins speaks for itself. They lost on the road against in a 3-point game against a team they should have beaten. And you know what? If Clemson had beaten Georgia and lost to NC State, guess where Clemson would be right now? Probably in the top 10, even though Alabama's resume of overall wins would be better than Clemson at that point. So I just don't think Clemson fans have a leg to stand on. I will say this, and let me just squeeze this in real quickly. I am tired of us pretending like the strength of a win on the road or the strength of a loss on the road or a strength of a team generally is directly proportional to how many fans fit in their stadium. You can't convince me, Swanny, that Texas A&M and NC State are any different at all. But I believe the Texas A&M loss seems like a better loss for Alabama. Like, you put Texas A&M and NC State on a neutral field, I'm saying it's probably coin flip, right? I mean, I'm thinking even after the performance that Texas A&M just had, NC State's had, a couple of better performances.
Yeah.
In their own right. But Texas A&M Stadium holds twice as many people. So we pretend that their team is better. I'm tired of us doing that. That's why, honestly, that's why the SEC gets love, because all their stadiums are big. And so when Wake Forest is unbeaten through half their schedule, nobody cares because no one goes to their games. That's laziness. That's lazy, media-driven nonsense. People aren't watching teams and watching games. I'm tired of that. So I think that also helps Alabama because, as much as I hate it, that is a fact of life. If you lose or win a game where a bunch of people are in the stands, it doesn't matter how good the team is, you are seen to have overcome a significant obstacle.
I agree 100%. When I think about Clemson and their resume moving forward, if their only losses end up being to Georgia and NC State, and if Alabama were to lose later on, I mentioned this, if they lose to Georgia as well, that these two resumes in terms of the losses, the quality losses are eerily similar. The one caveat could be if NC State continues to win out. Based on what I've seen from, say, North Carolina recently, it might be tough for them to find the two losses that they need. But I could say that if Georgia beats Alabama in the SEC championship, that Clemson as an ACC champion has a better resume.
Like I said, I mean, A&M may have figured it out offensively, but they've also got 5 games of absolute trash offense. I mean, even the convincing wins that they have over overmatched opponents, they turn the ball over repeatedly. There were massive frustrations on the offensive end. They finally got, as you talked about the pass to Smith, they finally got Smith going last night, but Calzada was a man possessed. Honestly, to ask him, particularly, we'll see how significant his knee injury is. It looked like they were looking at his knee last night. That may be a thing where you're running on a bit of adrenaline, and maybe you've got to be heavily braced or taped. That's going to impact his mobility, which his mobility saved them a few times last night. I'm interested to see Texas A&M going forward. But here's something that I brought up with Clemson. I'm going to continue to bring it up. Clemson has lost its 2 most difficult games to date. At Syracuse is not more difficult than NC State, but it would be their 3rd most difficult game to date. At Pittsburgh, Wake Forest at home would be games that you would consider in the at NC State realm of difficulty. So, yes, Clemson has potential losses on the schedule, but Alabama's got better wins in terms of the opponents that they played than this loss. To me, they're different resumes, right? They're different levels of opposition that they played. This is probably Alabama's, their 4th most difficult game, their 3rd most difficult game probably of the season, behind Ole Miss and Florida. So, yeah, I mean, I think Texas A&M will end up being a worse loss at the end of the season than either of Clemson's 2, perhaps. But again, there are a couple of qualifiers there. We don't know, Pittsburgh looks really good right now. Is Clemson going to be able to score 20 or hold Pittsburgh under 20? That's tough. Wake Forest overcame quite a bit in a road game at Syracuse that I thought they would lose and that they had every chance to lose. And they were able to make winning football plays in a tough environment, in a difficult game where not everything went their way. They were able to come out on top there. So I do think we got to look at those 2 games and say, boy, maybe those wins might be of a higher quality than we thought for Clemson, or maybe the loss is more excusable. Bottom line, like you said, if Clemson runs the table, they'll go to a New Year's Six Bowl. I believe they'll have a better resume of wins than we thought when they lost to NC State a couple of weeks ago. There's no question about that. And then as far as Alabama goes, is A&M more of a 6-6 team or a 9-3 team? I think time will tell with this offense.
Again, you talked about the Syracuse game against Wake Forest. Clemson takes on Syracuse Friday night. Qualk, you call Friday night football games for high school in the upstate all the time. How frustrating is it for you to have Clemson football on a Friday night?
Well, it's tough. I mean, I understand it's a fact of life that in the ACC that, they've got that contract with ESPN that puts them on Friday night. I understand that a lot of college games are moving to Friday nights because the NFL is starting to creep and take over Thursdays. And to be honest, college football sort of has seeded Thursday nights to the NFL, which I think is a bit of an early white flag, but I sort of understand because the NFL tends to take over whatever it decides to inhabit. For me, I mean, we're right in the middle of region play here in the upstate. We've got some really good matchups on tap. There's a game that we put on the air every year, Easily Pickens, that's coming up this next weekend. We can't be there. I also know that coaches like to scout games before Saturday games. They're not going to be able to do that. I think there's maybe a couple targets that play on Saturdays sometimes that maybe they'll be able to check out. But it does hurt a little bit of recruiting. And you know what? The silver lining is, there's nothing you can really do about the ACC's contract there with TV. But the good news is that Clemson is not hosting these games. So if you're a fan of a high school team, look, we're the flagship station. I would say put in your earbuds, go to your kid's high school game or go to your community high school game and listen to Don and Reggie and Tim do the broadcast and listen to us do the fifth quarter show. I'm pretty biased on that, but I think we got you covered. So at least you don't have to decide whether or not you're going to go to this game because Clemson's hosting. I think Dan Radakovich has drawn a line in the sand saying, look, we're not playing Thursdays. We're not playing Fridays. That's not who we are. If you want to send us somewhere, that's fine because we got to do what we got to do. So I think it's a small sacrifice and maybe a necessary sacrifice that Clemson does have to do this maybe once a year, once every couple of years, but it does get to be a road game that lessens the burden on everybody locally here in terms of trying to check out Friday Night Football, which obviously is a big deal here in the state.
Oh, look, no doubt about that. A couple of one final question for you, Qualt. Just looking ahead to Friday, your expectations for this Clemson offense, and maybe the bigger question, will Tiger fans see Puma-chan at all in this ball game?
I think it depends on how DJ plays. Look, that Oklahoma defended Spencer Rattler a lot when they chanted for Caleb Williams in the student section, but when the time was right, they changed quarterbacks. I will say, too, people are claiming for a quarterback change. One thing that has proved clear, and I know I got to hustle here, but I'm just going to make this point and kind of roll out. If you look at what separates elite coaches from non-elite coaches, sometimes it's about pulling the trigger on their quarterback change at the right time. Who can forget Jalen Hurts for Tua Tagovailoa? It seemed that was a Nick Saban brilliant masterpiece. Lincoln Riley doesn't win the game if he doesn't put Caleb Williams in right when he does. Yeah. Dabo Swinney, Kelly Bryant for Trevor Lawrence got the timing right. It's Cole Stout for Deshaun Watson. Seemed like he got the timing right there. It feels like elite coaches have their finger on the pulse there. So it's a bit of a throw off here answer, but I'm going to say if the timing is right, he will go there. But I believe DJ really needs to play well to keep that from happening in the first half.
William Qualkenbush is on Twitter at Qualt Talk Qualt. We'll talk to you next Monday, my man.
Thanks, Swanny. Always good to be with you.
We'll come back with more of the show that shakes the Southland right after this. Stay with us. Always great catching up with William Qualkenbush. And again, everything he said there, pretty accurate as far as your Clemson Tigers and what this matchup coming up this weekend means against Syracuse. And then ultimately that matchup next weekend against Pitt and what that could mean. 803-450-0086 text line, phone line. We've been hearing from you all weekend. We'll get to some of those coming up here in just a little bit. But over the weekend, I did have a chance to watch the Jacksonville Jaguars and Big Trev, the Giant Killer, because I'm locked in. As a matter of fact, I accidentally re-upped on the ESPN Game Pass or it's the NFL Game Pass. I don't know if you know about this, but you know what Game Plan is, right? That DirecTV used to have, Sunday Ticket or whatever. What this does is essentially through the NFL Network's app, which you can put on a Roku or an Apple TV device, is it allows you to stream the games right after they finish. And it's only $100 for the year. Now, I didn't mean to get it, but I ended up with it, so I might as well use it. And I was able to go back and watch Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars taking on the Tennessee Titans. And, again, Lawrence, to me, is not the issue. And I would say that there were probably moments early on that it looked like being a young quarterback in the NFL was going to be a problem for Lawrence like it is for a lot of guys. But he continues to play well, even though the Jacksonville Jaguars are now 0-5 on the season, losing 37-19 to the Titans. Again, they had one game this year that they really had a chance to win, and that was last weekend against the Bengals. But Lawrence, to me, continues to impress. 23 of 33, 273 yards, 1 touchdown through the air, threw a pick on the final throw of the game, the final play of the game for Lawrence, and then also had a 4-yard rushing touchdown, and again continues to showcase all of his talents there in the NFL. For anybody that questioned, what he can be, 7 carries, 28 yards, and a score. James Robinson at running back looks really good, but wide receiver play, defensive play, and just not having enough horses around him right now still continues to crop up. But give Lawrence credit. Give Lawrence credit because he stands in the fire. He makes the throws. As I said on Friday, he knows that he's going to get hit sometimes, but he sticks with it. But get this. Right now, the Jacksonville Jaguars are just the second team since 1977, and I guess technically the first team since 1977 to lose 20 straight games. The last team to pull that feat off, 1976-77 Buccaneers, who lost their first 26 games as a franchise. Jacksonville now 0-5 this season and lost their final 15 games in 2020. Trevor, however, appears to be that next level quarterback that I think everybody thought he would be. It is amazing to me to think, though, that in my life, this is the first time that this has happened. Like, no team has lost 20 consecutive games in my life. The BMOR, the bald man on radio. For kids at home, the old man on radio. What would that be? The OMOR? The old man on radio, kids. The 44-year-old Swanny. This is the first team that I have ever seen in the NFL lose 20 consecutive games. Think about that. 20 consecutive games. We talked about Alabama earlier winning 100 consecutive games against unranked opponents until this past Saturday when they fell at the hands of Texas A&M, and to steal a line from William Qualkenbush last week. Well, you hate to see it. But 20 consecutive games now for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And if you look at their schedule, when are they likely to get a dub? Maybe this Saturday, maybe this Sunday coming up against the Dolphins. And since I misspoke there, let me throw this other little tidbit out there for you. If at some point this week I say Clemson and Syracuse are playing on Saturday, please grant me some leeway on that fact, since they play on Friday, and playing on Friday is just ridiculous. And I know I should remember ridiculous things, but it is hard. But coming up this Sunday, the Jacksonville Jaguars take on the Miami Dolphins. Big Trev will be going heads up against Christian Wilkins and the Dolphins, who are 1-4 this season. So a potential winnable game and a winnable scenario this weekend against the Dolphins. Then the following weekend, they take on the Seattle Seahawks. And, of course, the Seahawks are without Russell Wilson. Now, they are a much better team than the Jacksonville Jaguars are. No questioning that fact. But the fact that they have to go into this game without their starting quarterback, and I believe Russell Wilson is going to be out for several weeks. I can't remember if it said 3 or 4 weeks. Geno Smith, the former West Virginia quarterback, is the starting quarterback for the Seahawks currently. But again, I think as far as Jacksonville goes, I think this coming Sunday, 9:30 a.m., they're actually playing the Miami Dolphins in London, if you can believe that. Big Trev going to be heading over to London for that game, a 9:30 kickoff on CBS. So no excuse not to see him. He's going to be on every CBS station in the country at 9:30 a.m., playing at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, where yesterday the Atlanta Falcons knocked off the New York Jets 27-20. Big Trev and Jacksonville will look to get their first win. Now, if you throw it out there about when Jacksonville will win their first game right here in the United States of America, I think they've got a great chance again coming up this Sunday against Miami in England. But their best chance after that might come perhaps against the Colts on November the 14th. That's on the road. Or maybe later in the season when they take on the Texans. But, I mean, listen, they got a chance to get some dubs. Don't get me wrong. But, I think it's going to be tough for them. But this Sunday in England, a great chance for Big Trev and the boys. I know there are a lot of sad faces out there today because your boy Swanny didn't sing any like I sung on Friday. I haven't sung the Carolina Panthers fight song today. They're still licking my wounds from yesterday's loss for the Carolina Panthers, although I am much more invested in Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville, as I mentioned. But I know a lot of you out there want to talk college football, want to dive into several things with us. So you can, 803-450-0086. And Tim's on the line and wants to talk about your Clemson Tigers. Tim, what's up, man?
Yeah, this is Tim. I called about a month ago. Just want to share my opinion of what's going on with Clemson. We know that they've been struggling offensively.
Yeah.
And I know a month ago I thought we was going to win the ACC championship and go to the playoffs. It doesn't look like that's going to happen. But basically, what we need to get better, I thought the other night when I watched a game with my friend, that offensive line played a lot better. And the running backs ran well. And the most inconsistency that I could see on offense was the quarterback and receivers. I mean, we haven't had a quarterback in a long time that can't throw over the middle, and when he does, he throws it almost on the ground to the tight end. I know the other tight end was hurt, but basically it's inconsistency in a quarterback. Don't mean to jump on DJ, but I say next Friday night when they play Syracuse, they need to, and they're still struggling in the third quarter, put the second guy in, Tyson in, and see what he can do. At least give him a shot at it, and hopefully we'll win that game. But I did see that we played a little bit better. Thanks that we got a great defense, and I think they're going to get better. And we know we got a field goal kicker, and the kicking game's solid. So I'm a Clemson Tiger, and thanks for having me on the show. You already talked about, what the other guy called. He was right on when he said the struggles mostly have been the quarterback. But I'm a Clemson Tiger, man. I think we'll have a chance to have a winning season. We get this thing cranked up, but it has to happen real soon. Thanks for having me on the show, Lawton. You got a great show, Mr. Swan, and you're a Tiger, man. I'm glad for this show, man. Thanks for letting me share my opinion, and go Tigers. Bye.
Tim, you call us anytime, man. You call us anytime. 803-450-0086. Look, I think Tim's all over it in a lot of respects, guys. Again, inconsistency at the quarterback has killed Clemson. And I know there's so many other things that are not perfect with this 2021 Clemson Tiger group. But they got to get it right, because if it's not right against Syracuse, buddy, beating Pitt is going to be tough, as I mentioned. I mean, they're high-scoring offense, and even though Clemson's been a great defense this year, how first off, you say, okay, well, how low are they going to hold Pitt? 21? 28? And if that's the case, then you got to score 31, 35, and you haven't proven the ability to do that against Power 5 competition. I'm with you, Tim. As a matter of fact, I think sooner than the third quarter in that ball game. If DJ is still struggling against Syracuse, a team that won a game a year ago, you have to go to Tyson. You have to go to Tyson, and you have to give him a chance. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, and you go right back to DJ. But let me tell you, if the Oklahoma Sooners can go from Spencer Rattler to Caleb Williams in the middle of a game where they're getting smoked by Texas, then Clemson, and spark a comeback, then Clemson, dang sure. Your boy Swanny has never said anything inappropriate on the radio. I have not once. This show is for kids to tune in, for kids to be a part of as well, with you in the car. About as close as Swanny's ever come. you best believe that if Clemson doesn't make a move, if DJ's struggling, I'm going to be hot and bothered on Friday night. Hot and bothered. If Oklahoma can do it, then Clemson can do it. And if you can say, well, Swanny, Tyson Pumachan is not as good as Caleb Williams, I don't care. I don't care. I want to see a spark. And if it doesn't spark it, then you go back to the other guy. We also had one of our female listeners call in and leave us a similar message, not with as much passion as Tim, but certainly asking the same question.
Does Dabo feel like he needs to change quarterbacks to make the team work better?
You know, it's hard to say what he thinks, but I'll tell you what I think. I think, yeah, they need to at least give him a shot, as I said, with Tim's call. And again, thank you to all of our callers and the texters. I got some more text messages, but you can call and participate just like that. 803-450-0086, 803-450-0086. That is the phone line. That is the text line. Nick from Georgia chimes in over the weekend. It says, congratulations, A&M, and Jimbo became the first assistant coach to beat Nick Saban. That's right. They were 0-24. How about that? Assistant coaches all time against Nick Saban until Saturday night out there in College Station. What an incredibly passionate environment and just an incredible place to play a ball game. And I didn't think the 12th man would be enough. If you listen to this show a lot, you know I did not think that the 12th man would be enough, but it was, and they did knock off the Alabama Crimson Tide. And again, back to what the callers are saying. Does Dabo need to make a switch or make a move to improve the offense? I don't know if it would necessarily improve the offense over the long haul of the season with Tyson Pumachan being the guy, but it's hard for me to imagine that maybe the threat of Tyson Pumachan being the guy might push DJ to be the DJ that we saw a year ago. I mean, I can't explain it. Like, you go and turn on some of the highlights from that Clemson Notre Dame game, and you're thinking that the real deal is going to continue to be in Tiger Town in 2021. And then you go turn on 2021 DJ, and you wonder, kind of like in the movie Space Jam, did somebody steal the powers from DJ? Like, is there somebody running around playing football somewhere right now that sort of, just swap powers with him? And DJ's just this shell of who he was, 12 months ago. It feels that way at this point. I just got to believe that somewhere deep down in DJ, if he can switch from the health side of things to an aggressiveness like I talked about on Friday, I think you'll see a lot better play. Stay with us.
What have you done for me lately? It's a fair question. Just don't lose sight of the bigger picture. Don't forget history. Lucky for us at Clemson, the answer to the questions, what have you done for me lately, and what have you done always, are the same. We win.
Final segment on a Monday afternoon. Lawton Swan hanging out with you again. We've been chatting a lot about the college football weekend that was, and it was a unique one. Couple of notes, though. Of course, Clemson and Syracuse will face off Friday night, 7 o'clock. That game coming up on ESPN. But the ACC did announce earlier today the schedules for next weekend's matchups on the gridiron. And your Clemson Tigers, of course, will be going to take on the Pitt Panthers in what could be a huge game for Clemson. Again, if you're going to talk about hanging on to just the two losses and continuing to try to fight your way back into the conversation of the top 10, top 5, top 4, whatever, again, you got to start looking the part. I said that earlier, but Clemson at Pitt, that's a 3:30 p.m. start either on ABC or ESPN. the network designation for that one will come out on October the 16th. So again, Clemson 3:30 ABC or ESPN taking on Pitt. All right, a couple of messages we got coming into the show just a little bit ago. Nick hit us up. He says, Swanny, I'm a little nervous about this Friday against Syracuse, considering how last time we played them and lost, and at that time our team was much better than this team. Thoughts about playing Syracuse on a Friday night again? Look, yeah, I think you go back to that game, and certainly that was a better Clemson team than this one has been so far. I think that getting the wide receivers healthy is going to be a big deal. I don't know, how those guys will look come Friday night, but I can't imagine that having this additional time off isn't good for the entire ball club and specifically the wide receivers. Clemson has lacked the explosive plays this entire year, and it's something that's not only been prevalent in the passing game, but also in the rushing game. And, minus a guy like Will Shipley and just with some of the injuries that Clemson's been dealing with, yeah, I mean, I'd love to see Joe Ngata and Frank Ladson and really everybody, including Justin Ross, just have these breakout type games over the next few weeks and really start to showcase what Clemson can be. But I don't have an elite level of confidence in it or a ton of confidence in it because of the fact that DJ Uiagalelei still seems to me to be just so out of sorts. Now, if DJ, as I said, over the past couple of shows, gets his head on straight, then I think he'll be fine. But up until then, I think you've got to just sit back, relax, and hope that things go well. Because I think when it clicks, I think you're going to be good to go. Tomorrow, by the way, the ACC tip-off gets underway. That's right. You heard it. The ACC tip-off getting underway. A big deal for all of you basketball heads out there who just love hoops as Clemson and Brad Brownell, again, get back out on the hardwood and get prepared for the college football season. There'll be a commissioners forum tomorrow, Tuesday morning at 8:30. And then you've also got Clemson, who will be on the docket coming up at 1:15. It'll be Brad Brownell, Naz Bohannon, and Hunter Tyson will be the representatives for Clemson, one of the last groups to go there at the ACC tip-off tomorrow. Again, for the Clemson Tiger faithful, the basketball team not expected to be spectacular this year, and I know that people are frustrated about that program, but I have said to you for years now, when you get your commitment up to hoops, you can expect great things. Until then, I think you're just going to kind of be middle of the road, occasionally making the NCAA tournament, and that's going to be the long and short of your life as a Clemson Tiger basketball supporter. I don't see where this team will be one of the top teams in the ACC, and I think it's going to be a struggle for them this year to make the postseason. I really do. They've got some good players at guard, not great players at guard, and I think that that's a big limiting factor in the league that is typically run by great guard play. All right, a couple more things to get to here. Let's see. John in Archdale, North Carolina says, Swanny, I crack up laughing every time the guy with the radio station out of Greenwood asks a general game question during the assistant's post-game interviews. Yeah, I can't remember that guy's name. I think it's like Rob something. But yeah, he does. He gives you the whole shebang, right? Yes, this is Rob, I don't know, Gilchrist maybe. And he gives it all the call letters, right? So it's like, yes, this is Rob Gilchrist from Greenwood, South Carolina, WXZY 97.5 AM and WRWD 101575 AM or whatever. I can't even remember what the numbers are. But yeah, he gives the long thing. Like he gives it all. But you know what? You gotta get your station out there. He's getting the station out there, and you noticed it. So Rob dives in. I mean, that would be essentially like me when we were on the air over in Florence before that station changed into a country music station, saying, we're on Fox Sports Radio 1400 in Columbia, whatever the other station was, 100.1 The Fan out of Florence, and 97.3 The Fan out of Walterboro. I mean, it was, but we didn't. We just, hey, Clemson sports talk. Yeah, I know what you're talking about, though, man. He does. He gives it all out there. 803-450-0086. Don't forget, text line, phone line. Be a part of the show anytime, any place, anywhere. Again, you can call us right now and leave us a message if you just want to. We'd love to hear from you here on a Monday afternoon. Don't forget, tomorrow we'll peek over the fence. Mike Yuva making his first appearance on the program as an official member over at Gamecock Central, or an official employee over at Gamecock Central. So we'll truly be peeking over the fence tomorrow. Until then, as always, y'all take care now and go Tigers.